Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of Turf Today, brought to you by Toro. My name is Adam Courchaine, joined by Brian Laurent, and this thing is being recorded on the Superintendent Network. And as we keep on harping, check out our YouTube channel, the Superintendent Network YouTube channel. We are getting more followers as we are going, and those shows are getting more views, which is great. It's good to see our guests, good to see our smiling faces, and it's nice that we can put out a little bit more content for you. Because, it's not always just audio people like to consume these days. People love YouTube, people love videos. So we're glad that we were able to put that out there, and there's a lot more great stuff on the SN page. We're seeing some more merchandise fly off the shelves, whether it's on the Turf Today shop or at the SN store. You can find both of those through our Instagrams or by going to the superintendentnetwork.com or turftodayshop.com. Lots of different things. Some products kind of go back and forth, meaning you can get something with both logos on them from different shops. Depending on what you're looking for, there's something for everybody, lots of different colors and sizes. And we can also do some custom stuff. If you're looking for some things with your course's logo on them or something like that, hit us up. We just want to give it a quick shout out to everybody who worked at the Arnold Palmer last weekend, all of the volunteers, all of the maintenance staff, everybody at the golf course. It was lights out. It was really cool to watch, and the outreach from everybody working there and volunteering there was really cool to see. So, as we progress through the summer, there's going to be a lot more excitement, and we're very fortunate to be part of the tournaments, whether we're traveling there or we're getting stuff sent to us from people like you. So to everybody there, keep up the great work. We're already looking forward to next year. Today, we're very, very lucky to be joined by the superintendent at Saucon Valley, a smaller course in the U.S. I believe they have around 60 golf holes. It's a very special interview that we do with Mr. Jim Roney, and he is fantastic. Put a nickel in that man and let him go. I think me and Brian asked him a few different questions, and we certainly don't get into everything we want to, so we'll have to bring this gentleman back, but sit back, relax, grab some popcorn. Turf Today is brought to you by Toro. Innovation is a word that companies use a lot, but what does it really mean? For Toro, it's about more than chasing the latest fad. It's about understanding what's important to you and helping you solve challenges you face in your day-to-day. So whether you want battery power that lasts longer or technology that works smarter, you can count on Toro to keep you ahead of the game. Visit Toro.com and see how Toro is always solving and always evolving. Look at that for timing. Oh, he's outside.
Yeah, buddy.
I mean, you got to, right? Look at that background.
It's too nice outside to be sitting indoors right now. So got a little balcony out here on my room.
Nice. You got some good internet?
We will find out.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you're connected to the hotel, it's not like you've walked too far. So you're on a little trip right now, a couple visits. You're on the West Coast?
Yeah, out on the West Coast in Palm Springs. Got made a little visit this morning. Tomorrow we've got Super Scratch Foundation. So actually opening reception tonight. Tomorrow is the big event. First time that they're expanding it beyond Philly region. So this is their big jump into kind of the national scene. So they've got, I think I saw 29 teams signed up for tomorrow's event.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is a nice start for this to just kind of, again, grow the organization and grow their giving out here to the West Coast. So yeah, looking forward to being a part of it. We're at golf event is at PGA West tomorrow. So, get to play where the pros played.
Yeah, not a bad little venue for that.
No, not at all. Not at all. Nice test of golf. So yeah, it'll be fun. Looking forward to getting out there and seeing everybody again. It's a great organization. The board and all the leaders with the Super Scratch are always a good time, fun to be around. And it's, we've talked about it a little bit before, but to have amateur golfers, just general club members want to give back and help secure the future of this industry, that's always a good thing. We get so much support from our partners and from inside the golf course maintenance industry to have golfers step up and want to help, because at the end of the day, they enjoy playing the game. And as our buddy Scotty Heebs always says, no
Easy.
superintendents, no golf courses. So
Exactly.
yeah, so yeah, for those guys, that group of members to understand and be able to grasp that there is a shortage in this industry of qualified, skilled labor, and want to do something about it is huge. So yeah, look forward to the growth of the Super Scratch, and we'll be hopefully getting involved with them a little more as we go by.
I think it's great that there's more people that are recognizing that, you got to take care of these people that are taking care of your golf course. There's so much money that goes into it. There's so much that involved, not just, at the golf course, but specifically on the turf. So you
Yep.
got to take care of these people so that you have the proper grounds to play on. So it starts at the
Yep.
top.
Yep, absolutely. It begins with awareness, right? And I
Hmm.
think this organization's certainly helping with that. Again, the people that write the checks for the superintendents, for the directors, the assistants, the EMs, just the general crew, right? It's the members, it's the people that play, and so the more they understand what this industry as golf course superintendents and greenkeepers and what they do, the more they understand that, the more they see some of the challenges they face, I think the better off the industry is going to be in. Again, because we're taking those issues to the people that write the checks. Like you said, start at the top. Those are the people you got to make aware of everything that's going on, and when you're there asking for help, they'll have an understanding of the what and whys. So it makes a difference.
Yeah, and we talk about this industry evolving all the time, but there's also the aspect of the culture at the golf course evolving. And as some of the, quote unquote, older folks move on, and, we have this new wave of people that come up, whether it's directors or head professionals and that kind of thing, I think there hopefully is going to be a lot more awareness to what is done on the golf course, how important it is, and things like the Super Scratch is, it's leading the way.
Yep. Yeah, golf course just doesn't magically present itself, right? There's
Nope.
people that have to go out there and get it ready, every single day. Every single day, there's someone out there getting the golf course ready for the players. Could be as simple as a mow and go or just changing hole locations or whatever, but there's always someone that's getting the golf course ready for someone to go play, whatever that is. Whether it's like I saw this morning, there were 78 guys out here at Toscana in Palm Springs, two golf courses, but there's a big staff doing the big stuff and the little details, getting it ready for to meet member and player expectations every day. So yeah, the more people can see it, the more people see some of the stuff that we put out there, some of the other people in our industry that are showcasing this work. The more the outside world and the everyday golfer sees it, hopefully the more they understand, and maybe the more people want to potentially get involved and make a difference at facilities.
You nailed it, sir. You're hot right now. Is it because of the vehicle you're driving out there?
Yeah, I think so, man. The
Yeah.
juices are flowing. You should have seen my face. You should have seen the faces of the people driving by me or walking by me in the rental car lot, dude. And I got so many, oh wow, good choice, good
Good
choice.
pick.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Like, I had nothing to do with it. It's what the guy gave me, I asked for a mid-size, that's what I signed up for, that's what I'm paying for, and just so happens they gave me a Porsche 911.
That's so funny, man. That's so funny. You sent me that picture. I was like, no way. How do you pull up to a turf shop with a camera? Like,
I know, I know. I parked as far away from the facility as I possibly could this morning.
oh my gosh, that is so
Yeah.
funny.
Well, you
And
should have seen me just trying to figure out how to get the thing to work. It's like because the trunk's in the front, so I'm trying to put like my camera bag and all that kind of stuff, my suitcase, and just ended up throwing everything in the cab of the car. It was
that's
nuts.
wild, man. Good for you. Good for you. Why not, right?
No, it's fun. It's fun to cruise around, and that's for sure.
I guess those guys are all down in Florida right now for getting ready for the Arnold Palmer.
Yeah, this weekend. This weekend is the big event at Bay Hill. So yeah, bunch of action down in Orlando.
I know I saw Monahan was saying that they're not going to be announcing anything coming up. So,
As far as the merger,
right, right. Because
uh,
some people were thinking that Bay Hill would be a spot where they might announce something, but he kind of came out and said, not yet.
I'm sure it
So
takes some time to put all that stuff together.
there, yeah, whatever sort of contract or agreement, plus all the money and who's getting what and where it's going, and that's got to be
Oh,
a good one.
there's so much money to divvy up there.
Mhm. But ultimately, if they can get all the golfers, all the top golfers in the same tournaments and playing in the same tour and that kind of thing, like that's what you want. You want best on best.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's everyone's dream, right? Our goal is to get that back to getting the best players playing against the best players every single week.
Yeah. And does that mean that all those guys that went to live just made all of that money? They just bank all that cash and they get to come back on the
Yeah.
tour and
Well,
away
and
we
that's I
go.
think that's the conversation too, is what's going to happen with what is going to happen with that scenario. Like Rory McIlroy probably passed up $500 million,
Right.
and
Buckets.
now he's all of a sudden, these other guys that did accept that money, they're not going to have to give it back, I can't imagine, right? So
Hmm.
so there's, that's I think that they were talking about, was it the oh God, what was that thing where they gave out the money to the tour players kind of based on like their profile or their social
Oh, like the
stat.
PIP,
Yeah, the
the
PIP.
thing
Yeah, the
Tiger
PIP.
wins every year. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So they were talking about, are they going to just divvy that money up between all the guys that ended up staying?
Potentially. I
Hey
guess that makes
guys,
sense.
it's,
Hey,
Hey,
Jim.
I called in. I don't know what's up with my. I'll go back onto the video, but I just called in and then yeah, I have no. My speaker's working, my microphone's working, but for some reason it's not.
And now it's time for another installment of Ask the Agronomist, presented by the Andersons. From tee to green, goal to goal, and shoots to roots, nothing is off limits.
Welcome back to Ask the Agronomist, presented by the Andersons. And joining us today is a PhD agronomist, Ben Pease. And our question today comes in from Doug Morrow. What is the optimal level of granular fertilizer on bentgrass greens per year?
All right, Doug, great question. Nice broad question, but we can drill down a little bit there. So things to consider would be the age of the green that you're going to be fertilizing, and well, more importantly, the age of the soil system underneath it. So newer newer greens, newer turf grass is going to require higher amounts of nitrogen. Think about your climate conditions, and by that I mean weather. Length of season is what really plays into the weather window. So obviously up north, we're going to put more fertility on our greens than we do, or less fertility up north than we do for our southern greens, because the growing seasons are different. For greens specifically, we want to think about our disease history. We're going to plan our nitrogen levels and our nitrogen applications to try to get rid of those lower end diseases like dollar spot. We don't want to be having to solely rely on fungicides for dollar spot control. We can, obviously get a lot of that under control with fertilization. And depending on the traffic level that you're looking at, think of the recuperative needs that the greens in question are going to need. And that could vary a little bit from a par 3 versus a par 5. If it is a green that's stressed and needs more recuperative efforts, then you have to up the fertilization rate. But all in all, bring all those things together, you're looking at a total nitrogen needs of probably 2.5 to 3.5 pounds of nitrogen per thousand on a northern-ish green. So that's what I would call the optimum level of total fertility. In the north, southern greens, we could have a year-long growing season. So you're looking at 4 to 6 pounds of nitrogen potentially. He asked specifically about granular fertility. So we all know that there's superintendents doing foliar applications as well. A big part of their fertility programs, a lot of good products out there. So I like to think that the granular aspect should be, 50% of your total fertility budget, or maybe up to 75% in some of the areas where it's not a year-round growing situation. We got lower temperatures, lower growth habits. So 50 to 75 is a pretty good range to think about. Here's my nitrogen budget for the year. And I don't mean money wise. I mean, how many pounds are we going to be putting out? I like to see 50% of that be granular, if not more. So maybe up to 75%. And there's even some courses that go 100% granular. But for the most part, people are doing some sort of a mixture of the two. So think of your geographic location. That'll tell you, season long what you need to have, and then, cut that in half to start with, and, up to 75% of granular. I like to have a really good, strong base of granular fertility, especially to start the year off with. So think of that in the cooler months of spring, and then the summer, we usually switch to some granular plus a lot of foliar, and then kind of switch back in the fall to some granular. So hopefully that gets at the root of Doug's question. 2.5 to 3.5 total in the north, and 3.5, 4, or well above down south for total nitrogen needs, and strike a good balance between granular and foliar, depending on the weather patterns and your kind of location. So good question, Doug. It's a good topic. We could go on all day on fertility. That's our specialty here. So
I liked how you mentioned the balance, though, because that is a big thing right now. My question for you, Ben, just to follow up, would be, how do you know if you've gone too far?
Too far. So if you've gone in either direction, let's go that way.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Go too far low. That's been the trend in the 2000s to the 2010s. Who can use the lease? Well, then you start to see your recuperative process decline. You see a lot of traffic issues. So if you're going too low, you'll see the turf get stressed out. But if you're going too high, then you'll probably see less root development, more thatch, because if you overly feed the turf, we're going to just grow it so fast that we can't keep up with our thatch management, and you get a lot of top growth. So if you notice your green's getting kind of soft, that's when it's time to think about, well, am I overfeeding or am I overwatering in conjunction with that fertility? So take a look at the firmness, the speed, and watch the thatch levels. That'll give good feedback on are you correct with your fertility needs.
Thank you so much to Dr. Ben for joining us today. This has been another Ask the Agronomist question presented by the Andersons.
All right.
Hey,
there you go. I am
magic.
A tech wizard, boys.
You got it.
Yeah, I love it.
I am not a tech wizard, but that worked out.
Hey, you know what?
I don't know why. But
you're a superintendent. You guys are problem solvers. You just figured it out, man.
yeah, sometimes you just reset.
Yeah, that's
Did
the
you
best
try
thing to do.
turning it off? Did you unplug it and restart
exactly,
it?
Exactly. Yeah. Reboot.
I love it. Well, thanks for joining us, Jim. Appreciate we finally were able to make it happen.
Yeah, this is cool. Where are you at? It looks warm where you are.
It is warm. Yes, I'm down in Palm Springs, so getting some work done out here. Yeah, it's
nice.
It's pretty nice. That's when you came on before. We were talking about my rental car upgrade. I somehow got a midsize and was upgraded to a Porsche 911. So that
sucks.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal. Although I did make the mistake yesterday when I first got it. I took the top off. It's convertible, so I put the top down, and I was cruising around with the top down in the desert, and they had some of those haboobs where it's like the big. It's literally called a haboob, I think. It's a big like sandstorm.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm driving down the highway, and I'm running into these big sandstorms. I'm just sandblasting my face driving around the desert. It was great.
That's no bueno.
Yeah, it's all right. It worked out.
It's worth it, man. You get an upgrade like that. That's wonderful.
Oh, hell yeah. I'm just glad I didn't bring the golf clubs, so don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, they wouldn't have fit. They'd be sitting in the front seat with you.
Yeah, exactly. It wouldn't be the worst thing. But how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm real good. I had a crazy day thus far. So the winter's been kind of shitty. So we have a lot of projects in, Murphy's Law, which is kind of the black cloud. So it's all hitting us at once. So we're actually deep tiny right now. We started at 1:30, and then I had a meeting with my chairman. So I didn't even get out there and see it. Gavin's on vacation in Mexico. And so my assistants are handling it. And I'm like in a meeting, I'm texting, all right, everything good. Here's a picture. It's tufting a little. I'm like, keep going. Just
Keep it
it'll
going.
roll out.
It's the fourth day of March. We got time,
Yeah,
guys.
Yeah.
exactly.
Awesome.
So,
So for those that aren't familiar with you, Jim, tell us who you are.
well, Jim Roney, that's me. I'm at Saucon Valley Country Club. Been here. This is my 20th year. Obviously, um, Brian, you're well aware of Saucon. I live in your house, your former house.
Yep, yep.
So
I
that's
can tell you
pretty cool.
stories about that attic up there.
Yeah. It's yeah,
All
it's
fair.
ironic. Yeah.
Uh,
But yeah, so big place, 360 acres. We bought that house right next to the 6-hole course, right next to hole number one. There's another 8 acres there, so 8.9 acres or something. So you know, we went from 850 to 860 acres in one purchase.
that's nuts. So
It's
so how on earth do you prioritize what needs to be done on over 800 acres?
Okay.
it's staffing, man. That's the key. You have to have good staff. And I'm a big, proponent of hiring interns and then letting them grow and then convincing them to come back when they graduate and let them occupy that nucleus position. Some people call them AITs. I don't subscribe to that personally, only because I really don't want some artificial ceiling that's created where these individuals think that they're studying or trying or working hard so that they become an assistant when they're working with assistants. I want them to work hard to become a superintendent, and granted there's steps that they need to take and natural progression, but that's really where it all starts. All that energy starts really with those interns, and hopefully I'm able to convince them to come back when they graduate and kind of grow through our system and have the ability to climb the ladder, eventually becoming, a superintendent, and then the culmination of that moving on and running their own club. So, we've had some great success in the last 20 years. I think over 30 individuals have moved through. So they're all doing real well. That's great. And I think you've seen a bit of a change in our industry, I'd say about 6 to 8 years ago, where golf was really struggling. It's really booming now again with COVID, but you saw a lot of those turf programs that were 30, 40, 50% subscribed. So everybody's really struggling to, hire those individuals. So if you're an intern, man, you had, you know, whatever you wanted, you could do. And then when you graduated, whatever you wanted, you could do. So, a lot of competition there for very few qualified candidates. And I think that's kind of hurt our industry a bit. I do see a big upside. You're going to see that, I think, here in another 2, 3 years, when you get the benefit of COVID and you have these people that had some career changes that decided to go into golf. I think we're going to see some pretty good, talented people again. But, we're 2 years out, I think, from where I can really lean on one of those individuals to run one of the courses here and allow them to kind of grow to move on to do their own thing. So that's really where I see the success in the way that I manage such a big facility.
So what kind of culture do you guys need to create at your course or a course like yours to be able to draw in, good interns and be able to kind of retain them?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's a great question. And, just 5 years ago, I was paying interns like $14 an hour. Now I'm advertising at 21, and if you look at how the business has changed, I mean, if you look at an assistant, for instance, you were hiring an assistant at $45,000, with paying their dues and for associations and letting them go to conferences and continuing education and even housing. Now you're not, you can't even recruit an assistant if you're not looking at 75 to 85,000 at a club like this. We're in a unique region in the Lehigh Valley where we're not quite Philly, we're not quite New York, we're not quite New Jersey, but we're 45 to an hour and 15 away from all those major areas. So the expectation is still there as far as what recruiting qualified people are gonna require from a salary perspective. So it's pretty difficult for us to compete with those big clubs, but we're kind of, considered a peer of those clubs. Our standards are the same, whether it's Baltusrol or Marion or Otomic or, any of those clubs. So, it makes it difficult. So, the culture part of it is, we struggle with it because you talk about like work-life balance and all these other cliche or buzzwords that we're dealing with in society right now. Gosh, when I was just a kid working on a golf course, I didn't leave. I didn't take off in the summertime. There's no such thing as work-life balance. It was you worked until you were sick or you went back to college, so it's a little different now. So culture really has been something that have tried to develop a little bit differently, just so that we can build some redundancy in our staff, so that we have, instead of one assistant under a superintendent, I need to have two or three assistants at different levels under that superintendent, because people need their time off, and they need that work-life balance. You know, having staff, having the access to the golf course, that's huge. It's something that I really didn't do growing up. I didn't get into the business because I was a golfer. I wasn't a golfer. I grew up in Southwest Philly in a concrete jungle without a lawn. So like golf was certainly not on my radar. As a kid, it was street hockey and football. You didn't that's all you did. Um, so trying to instill that knowledge and that ability for this young generation to see the benefits of the game of golf, as well as the successes of producing a championship product. I mean, that's kind of where our culture really is going right now. But without that redundancy, I don't see it succeeding. You have to build and give people time off.
Well, I think a big part of culture is also trust, and I think it's trust that needs to go both ways. You trusting your guys and them trusting you, and
Yeah.
especially at a property like yours with three 18-hole courses, a 16-hole course, and just a lot going on at all times. How do you go about building that trust internally with your team?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So like, they talk about managing. So like from my perspective, you want to manage up and down, right? So from that first year individual that's a high school student that's out weed whacking creek banks, like we need to get the message to that individual all the way up to my green chairman or the club president, right? So I'm always managing my key group, which really is about 12 individuals, um, and ensuring that I'm always available, even if I'm not. Like, there's pretty good chance that my door is going to open while we're doing this podcast, because I have to be available, right?
Sure.
Um, that's one of the main, I think, cogs really in the way that we develop the program and have that trust. But it's not always peaches and cream. It is tough. You're dealing with an X factor, Mother Nature. This isn't the type of profession or job where you're just going to hit a time clock and go home. Mother Nature, she doesn't know that it's a birthday or a wedding, or it is what it is, right? So
We'll definitely get more into the course and everything going on there, but we got to know, West Philadelphia, born and raised.
yeah,
Like how does
Southwest Philadelphia.
Southwest Philadelphia, born and raised?
Yeah.
So how?
Yeah, I got that Prince of Bel-Air reference
Yeah,
there. That was
little
good. That was good.
Fresh Prince, yeah. So how did that happen? How do you end up becoming a golf course superintendent and falling in love with golf?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I mean, I ask myself that often, and so grew up in the city. We moved when I was 16 out to the suburbs, played football, decided I didn't really want to play football anymore. And my father worked for Philadelphia Electric Company, and he had a buddy who was a member at Rolling Green in Springfield, which is a really good William Flynn. I mean, it does not get the notoriety that it deserves. It has recently. I'd say in the last 5 or 6 years, you hear about it often. But they did a lot of projects there, cut a lot of trees down. But William Flynn is probably my favorite architect, so it's got a warm spot in my heart. So instead of playing football, I got a summer job. That was the rule at my house. If you're not going to play football, you're going to work. And that was an opportunity. And even in the city when I was a little kid, like I would just get lost. I'd go to the train tracks and I'd walk the train tracks and go to like fields and I always wanted to be outside. So working on a golf course was wonderful. Seeing the sunrise, I'd rode my bike, 10-speed bike, 5 miles every morning. The ironic part was that my parents bought a house on Golf Hills Road, which is at the base of the sixth hole on Marianne's West Course. So I literally could walk down the street and get a job at Marianne, but I wasn't the brightest kid in the world, so I elected to ride a bike 5 miles every morning at 5 a.m. so that I could get to Springfield, and then I'd have to ride my bike. At least it was downhill there. It was uphill coming home. So that was kind of a pain in the butt, but
should have planned it the other way. So when you're tired after a day, you get to cruise home.
It didn't take very long for me to get my driver's license.
Okay.
I bet.
I saved up enough money that first year, and I said, I'm buying a car.
There was some motivation there.
Yeah, right. But it was awesome. I just fell in love with, seeing the sunrise and having the ability to go out and work with the guys and just the camaraderie that existed. And then that kind of introduced me to the game of golf. I was managing and not managing, but I was working on the golf course, raking bunkers, mowing greens, watering, doing setup, things like that, and I just really enjoyed what I was doing. And then I started to play golf. I'm not a very good golfer. I have fun playing golf, but I don't get to do it enough. I certainly don't like playing the golf course that I work at. That is difficult. And it's not fair. It's not fair to the team because I don't get out on the property. Like if I go visit some of my peers, like Phil at Oakland Hills or Paul at Marion or Chad at Muirfield, like these guys get out and walk their golf course every day. Like I can only go to indicators. Like I just can't walk. So I have it set up where luckily I live on the property, so I could drive my golf cart from my house, and I can stop at one of the shops and I go look at some of my indicators, and sometimes I don't get all the way over to Wayhill, which is where my office is, until 11 o'clock. So I didn't look at anything at Wayhill. I'm just kind of like bouncing around, looking at indicators, putting out fires, and then setting the plan up for the next day or 2 days later or 3 days later. But when it comes to, the morning meeting or who's doing what, when, where, I kind of leave that up to the superintendents. But when it comes to, fertility or, spray program, water management, any of that kind of stuff, I'll write all that, and then, those guys will go out and execute. I can't give up that part of it. I need to be involved from that regard. But yeah, I mean, I can talk in circles, obviously. You asked the questions about concrete jungle. I mean, it just is what it is, it gets in your blood, and I honestly didn't want, there's so many connections to Brian Laurent. It's not even funny. Like, so I worked for Dave Kroll, right? Dave Kroll worked at Wilmington Country Club. Terry, Brian's father, was Dave's superintendent on one of the courses, right? At one point, or an assistant. So then he left Wilmington and came up here. And then Dave left Wilmington and went to Rolling Green. I started working with Joe Osick. And then Joe was let go. And then they brought in Dave Kroll. And, right away, I'm like, well, what was wrong with Joe? And so I'm thinking, boy, I grew up where I could walk to the store. I could walk to my grandparents' house, both of them. I could walk to my great grandmother's house. It's just so different. So that was like a massive culture shock. So I'm like, wow, there's not a lot of job stability here. I don't know that I want to be a superintendent, even though I really enjoy what I'm doing. So I actually elected to kind of look at doing other things, but it just gets in your blood and it brings you back, right? So that's kind of that's it in a nutshell. Probably going to tell you too much stuff, but I got to the point where I would go to Rolling Green in the morning. Let's just, even when I was in high school, I mean, I'm in high school. I was 16 years old, and as soon as Dave would call and say, "Okay, we're ready to have you back," I'd go back, and after school, I literally would go and show up there and work in the shop, whatever it was, whatever needed to be done. If I'm doing splitting wood or whatever it was, and then when the golf course opened up for the season, I would go out in the evenings and do setup for the next morning. And then I'd go home, and then come in the morning, and I'd mow greens. And then after greens, we had a terrible shop, and he would always mow on the weekends, 9 holes of fairways on Saturday, and then front nine, back nine kind of thing on Sunday. So I'd stay. Everybody would leave. The assistant lived on property, so he'd go home. Then my job was to clean all the mowers. And then around 11:15, I got a break. And then at about 12, I had to go out and do my loop to make sure I'm babysitting greens all day. So I do that all day on Saturday. And then Saturday evening, I go out and I cut all the cups again for Sunday morning. And then I'd come in on Sunday. Sunday was great because I'd watch grass, but then I didn't have to cut cups, so I got out early. But that's kind of how things went. So I did that for 5 years, 4 of which working for Dave, and I asked for a raise. I got a dime, and
Oh boy.
so Brendan Byrne, who's a great superintendent, a very good friend of mine, he was going to NC State. He's just a little ahead of me, and he was Dave's boy. So Dave had him spraying, Dave had him doing all the things that needed to be done, and he went to NC State. I went to community college, so I didn't rate, I guess, but I didn't make the money he made, but I was doing all the same stuff. And Gary Stump, who was just the greatest mechanic ever, he's like, "What are you doing, man? You got to ask Dave for like a quarter raise or 50 cents. He gave you a dime, And so I was making $5 an hour, 5.25 an hour. So I said, "Hey, Dave, what do you think?" He's like, man, I got to go to my budget's approved. I got to go to my chairman." And then I was a little dejected, I came in the next day, he told me that he couldn't do anything. And I'm like, man, this is crazy, So I go home and I grab the Philadelphia Inquirer and I'm looking at job postings, and 2 jobs are hiring. FDR, which is the public golf course right down in South Philly. Growing up, we used to go there. We'd go there and have picnics. But it's right outside of the vet, and it's a parking lot, and they have softball fields there, and then they have a public golf course. So I'm like, I got a car, I can drive down there. Let me see what they'd hire me as, And it was I think the job was like $7 an hour or something, so it was significantly more than I was making. And then the other ad was Marion, and I'm like, well, that just makes plenty of sense, right? So I call Marion, and first, I talked to the guy at FDR Park, and I wish I could remember his name, but he said, "So, and you're thinking about doing this, I'm like, "Yeah, I'm looking at transferring to Penn State or to Del Val, and I'm working at Rolling Green." And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's a great club. That's a good golf course. That's a great place." I said, "Yeah, but I don't feel like I'm being treated the way I should be." And and he says, "Well, don't come here." He goes, "You don't want to come here. There ain't a damn thing I could do for you, And it was rough. I mean, there was they found a dead body on the golf course. Like it was bad down there, and so, but it was where I sort of grew up, right? So I mean, like obviously, you kind of go somewhere where you'd feel comfortable, and so I was thinking that. And then I called over to Marion, and I talked to Marie. Marie was a long time office manager at Marion, predated Paul and Dick Bader, and that was right when Paul Latchall was taking over for Dick. And so I could hear Paul in the background as I'm talking to Maria, and he says, "Wait, he has experience, you know?" And then he gets on the phone, and I say, "Yeah, I work at Rolling Green, and there's a history there that I didn't realize, but Mr. Latchall was at Augusta, and then he left Augusta and went to Wilmington, and Dave had left Wilmington to go to Rolling Green. I'm in the middle of all these weird politics that I don't even know." And so he goes, Paul B's like, "Well, this is my first job, and I'm not taking somebody's guy. So you need to talk to Dave and make sure that he's okay with this, And so I go into work the next day and I talk to Dave and I say, I'm just really disappointed that I couldn't get a quarter more, And but I think I'm going to leave. I'm going to either go to this place at FDR Park, which I knew I wasn't going to go, or over to Marion. It's just closer. It makes more sense, and that was it. I just made that move, and that was I look at some big career moves in my or decisions that I made in my career that really, I think, set me up for success. That was one of the best moves I've ever did. I went immediately over to Marion. I loved it. It was a very high-paced group of phenomenal superintendents. I mean, you had Rick Halunda was the assistant. Rick Shriver was there. Like, I'm my best friend to this day, Frank Heary. Like, I met him there. He was an intern from Del Val. I was transferring to Del Val, so everything just kind of worked. It was pretty neat. I ended up staying there so that was 1993. And I was there until 96. Yeah. So November of 95, we actually it was August of 95. We fumigated the greens at Marion, and we were putting an irrigation system in, so it was a nightmare. And I was in school. I was supposed to graduate in December, and so I said, "Paul, if I can work this out." The thing about Del Val is it's such a small school that there's classes that are only available. Like, if you transfer in, you're screwed, And I transferred in. So I ended up going for 5 semesters because we regrassed, and I chose to take 2 night classes and work in the fall because we fumigated and regrassed the greens, but we were also putting a new irrigation system in at the same time. So you're growing in greens with terrible water, like barely any pressure. Sometimes you're using water carts, to grow in seedlings. So it was craziness. But again, like those decisions shaped me to where I'm at. Like, we're always thinking outside the box. That's what we do. You joked about it with my technical difficulties here today, Brian, but it's true. We're always trying to fix something or come up, some ingenious ways to make things easier on us. So I did that. At the time, John Zimmers was at Wilmington. He was an assistant for Mr. Latchall. I'm sorry, no, Mr. Latchall had left Wilmington and went to Congressional. Zimmers left with him, went to Congressional. And I had met John once or twice when Mr. Latchall would come up to Marion. And then it was right after the 95 Senior Open, so the lead up to the 97 U.S. Open. And there was a job, a brand new construction job in Cleveland, and I was like third or fourth in line at Marion to be an assistant. I still wasn't I still had to graduate in May. And I remember when Paul B sat me down, he's like, "Man, you've come back, you've done all this stuff, you stayed, you changed your curriculum so that you could help out." And he's like, and you're only an intern. Like, it just doesn't seem right. He's like, I'm going to give you a title. We're going to call you an AIT. It's
Nice.
just, the assistant. So that's a Matt Schaeferism, by the way. He invented that term. And I have a great relationship with Matt. He's just phenomenal. And that's one of his lines, phenomenal. It's a word he uses often. But so I just said to Paul, I go, Paul, I appreciate that offer, but and I honestly, there was a one of the assistants had left. Chris Givens had left, and so I applied for an assistant position even though I didn't have a degree. So Paul sits down and interviews me, and he's like, you got to have a degree in order to be an assistant. I said, I get that, but it's an opportunity to be professionally evaluated, right? I've been here. Here's my resume. I'm all ears. Rip me apart, tell me, So, and it was a great, um, it was a great opportunity to have a one-on-one with Paul and let him tell me what he thought of me and things that he thought I needed to do. And at that point, he said, I'm going to offer you this position of AIT, and I just said, no, 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 no. Couple of your assistants suck. I don't want to be them. I want to be you. So like, don't worry about
What a
giving me a
line.
title. I don't want to be anything. I don't need a title. I want to be I want to be the guy that you call to spray the West Course greens at 8 o'clock at night or midnight. I want to be the guy that you call, just if you do that for me, then I'm learning and everything else will come in time. And it was right, it's exactly what happened. And then, Zims had left and he was looking for a good guy. And then Paul sat me down, like, this is a few months later. And then he's like, you know, you got a position here as soon as you graduate, or, John's looking for a good guy and, you're pretty resilient. John has done a lot for my dad and he's a good guy. And I think you guys would complement one another. So would you be interested, in heading out there? So I'm like, yeah, so I send my resume to Zims and I go out and I spend the weekend with him and Tracy and we worked, I guess I was there maybe 52 hours, and of the 52 hours, we probably worked easily 22 of them. We flagged and I'm walking in the woods. Like it wasn't even cleared. It was just, you had fairway lines and turning points and cut lines and it's just all survey lath on 350 some acres. It was awesome, and I'm like, well, I could stay at Marion and I know what I'm dealing with, or I can go on the ground level of a project that I think is going to be spectacular. And that was just a no-brainer. So that's the second, critical decision in my career. And there's a lot to be said about that. Like when you build a golf course from the beginning and you're there, you, there's really no learning curve. Like, you're literally there for everything that went on. So like, as I walked the golf course, or, we just went back for I think it was our 25th.
It's the
Yeah,
25th.
it was the
Yeah.
25th. It was like last summer. And we're walking around and the stories that me and Zims were talking, and Chad was an assistant there for me when he was an intern and then he was my assistant. And all those conversations that we had about, oh, do you remember this? Do you remember that? Or what a pain in the ass this was, or what, everything under your feet. Like the turf is the turf, right? But it's everything that goes into it, right? Just amazing. So yeah, so ended up being in Cleveland for 9 years. Gosh, I think Zims was there. Took forever to grow. I remember it was like May 20th and it was snowed. We had Tom Fazio visit and it was snowing.
You're in the snow belt.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was not an easy project. It took every
Yeah.
bit of 2.5 years to build. And then I'll never forget, we opened, I think we debuted at like 52 or something like that in the top 100. Number two, best new course behind the other one in Ohio. Or no, Victoria National was another
Okay.
Fazio in Indiana.
Yep.
And so pretty cool scenario. We ended up having a U.S. Open qualifier because our green chairman, Dusty Murdoch, was very connected with the USGA and with the PGA and somehow pulled that off. He was an old IMG guy. And Gabriel Hurdsted ended up winning, and he qualified for the Open, but Bob Ford played. And so Bob Ford, the longtime pro at Oakmont. So very shortly after that, there was a vacancy at Oakmont, and Zims left, went to Oakmont. And then Dusty took me out to the Indians game, and he said, Jimmy, my boy, Mr. Conway would like for me to figure out how we retain you as the superintendent and then gave me some shitty offer. And I just said, yeah, You can, I don't care who you, I'm not interested. I just, because like he also was doing headhunting at the time. So there was a couple jobs that he threw my name in and I went and it was like $30,000 more to go somewhere I never been. And he's my connection to that job. And now here's something that we've done together and I felt lowballed. So I
He
just said,
knows
nah,
what's out there. Yeah.
you're
He's
right.
giving you
Yeah.
the
So I
10
said,
cent raise,
nah.
huh?
Yeah, I mean, I love it out here. I loved Cleveland. I loved the Midwest. But being a Philly city boy, I mean, I was out there 9 years. I heard the horn beat maybe 3 times, and it was me. It's like people are nice out there. You know, so yeah, so that was kind of cool. And then Dusty said, okay, well, I'll have to talk to Bill, and then Mr. Conway, who was the owner, single owner. And it worked out great. And I stayed for, I guess, another 6 or so years until it's just the craziest story. I mean, you know it, Brian, because I tell it
Yeah.
all the time. But like Eric Graytalk, very good friend of mine, was at Wingfoot. He's putting an irrigation system in with Paul Granger. Terry was here doing, your father's putting an irrigation system in here at Saucon. We're at the National in Anaheim. Eric's like, hey, you want to go to dinner with me and Paul Granger and Terry Laurent and his wife, Terry? I'm like, I've never met your mom. I'm like, hell yeah, I'll go. I just because I know your dad, and I'm like, that'd be cool. And I want to be able to tell stories about Dave Kroll because that guy's just the best. And so we all go to dinner and I didn't know Paul Granger all that well. I knew him, but I didn't know him all that well. I knew him from some of the projects that he worked on from some of my friends. And we had a great dinner and it was awesome. And I just remember your dad saying like, man, I want to get back to the Midwest. And I'm saying I want to get back east because at the time, my wife at the time was pregnant with my daughter, and we had Sean, I think was 2 or 3 at the time, and we went home for the big thing in my family is Halloween. So I'd take the kids. Well, it was only Sean at the time, but we would go to my brother's house, and the kids all dress up, and he was strange to his cousins, and that just made no sense to me. Like I grew
Yeah.
up in like I saw my cousins every single day. Like that's the neighborhood. So that was odd, and I'm like, I really, if now we're pregnant with our second, I really would like to get the kids closer to the family, and so I was already thinking about that, right, and telling that story at dinner, and Paul Granger says, "Well, Jesus, why don't you guys just swap? Terry, why don't you go to Chardon, and that's close enough to Indiana, and Jim, you go back to Lehigh Valley, that's close enough to Philly. There you go, it's solved." Well, when you, I mean, what?
A
Less
year
than a
later,
year,
less than a
yeah,
year.
less than a year later, I get a phone call from Dick Bader and Alan Gamble and Gene Matari and so my first phone call was to your dad. I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
what's going on? He goes, he just kind of was very honest with me, and he's like, it is what it is. The steel company's not here anymore. There's a lot of things that need to happen at the club. There's a lot of change, and be careful. And so it's some of the best advice that you could have. And 20 years later, here I am.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Turf Today is also brought to you by Standard Golf. And setting the standard in golf course accessories since 1910 is not just a tagline, but it's also the responsibility at Standard Golf that they bring to work each day. They're the only manufacturer with a full line of products from maintenance to course setup, practice range, driving range, and turf growth. Check them out on Instagram at Standard Golf CO to stay up to date with everything they have going on.
Well, you definitely, things fell into place and the decisions all worked out, right? So I mean,
Yeah.
talk about the process of, I guess, the thought process of switching jobs. You talked about going to Marion, which was obviously very early on, but then Sand
Yep.
Ridge and then
Mhm.
coming out here. What's the thought process? What are the considerations that you're thinking about when you're moving on?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key is really to go to a place where you've got. I've interviewed at plenty of places when I was trying to leave Ohio, um, and like there's some clubs you go to and you go through the gate, you get that warm, fuzzy feeling. You're like, oh, this is so special. Well, I felt that at Marianne. I felt that at you feel that I'm lucky enough to have gone to Augusta a bunch. So like you're there, Cypress Point, still like one of my favorite places in the whole entire world. That's another one. I don't know if I said Marion, Aronimick, like these places, Saucon felt that way when I came here. So that gets you, right? And I thought it was 36 holes. I had no idea it was 60. I was like,
You showed up for your first day, like, wait a minute,
I
there's 60 holes?
I was like, and I go right up, we had this real odd guy that was our caddy master, Dave Fard and Buzzard, I'm sure you knew him, but and he was good friends with my buddy Russ Myers down at Cart Sound. They worked together. Like, Dave was like one of the caddy masters or something down there at Ocean Reef. And so on my way out here, Russ called and he's like, hey, good luck and, say hello to the Buzzard. So I'm like, whatever. I go up to him. Well, it was pouring rain. It was like 42 degrees. And that's my tour of the property. And they give you like a, I don't know, I had lunch with the GM and then I had to meet like a chairman or something. But I stayed in the guest house and I think I started at 8 a.m. Well, first thing I do is go right to say hello to this Buzzard guy, right? And I'm like, I know it's pouring raining, but can I get a golf cart? How am I going to get 868 or 850 acres in 60 holes of golf? I realize it's not continuous cart paths, but at least I can jump around or something, And he's like, no cart path, no golf carts today. So you got to walk. So I walked the whole entire 60 holes.
Wow.
Like and it was pouring raining. It was cold. None of my notes I could read because all the pen just bled through everything.
Oh my gosh.
I was wet in areas that I didn't know existed. And then I was flying out that night but I still had that feeling. I was like, man, that's just such a cool property. And God, aside from trees, like a lot of tree work, like it was in great shape. It was immaculate. There was not a lot of agronomic challenges at all. It was like drainage and tree work. Um, so, and I know how difficult it was in talking with Terry. Like I knew how difficult it was because of the old guard here that was on their way out. He wasn't allowed, his hands were tied. He couldn't cut trees down, and that was not a problem for me. It got to the point where like, even Bader said, oh, you're going to have to talk in your interview process about tree removal. It's a major thing. You're going to have to get ArborCom in there. You're going to have to do that. So I start putting a pen to that, right? And I'm like, it's going to cost $150,000 for ArborCom to come in here to tell this club the trees that need to come down after they do the whole study and inventory and all that crap. And that's not all the trees, There's 25. When I got here 20 years ago, there was, I think the number was 18 to 25,000 trees. We still have 18 to 25,000 trees, It's just some of the ones that were impacting, air, sun penetration or air movement are not there anymore. But I didn't have the challenges your dad had. I just didn't. Once a few of those guys, and I don't want to mention names, even though I'm sure most of them are dead now. Once that old steel mentality was gone, like I went right in. I talked to the club president, and we had just the greatest, awesome guy. And Andy Warner was like, my chairman and my very soon to be new president. And I just said, we can spend all this money on having a company come out here to tell you exactly what I'm going to tell you. Like, that's what they do. Like, why don't we come out together? Why don't we look at where the shade is? Why don't we look at morning sun? Why don't we look at air movement? Why? And he's like, okay. And so I spent like 2 days, 2 mornings kind of pointing stuff out. And he's like, you sold me. I'll do my part. That's all it took. Like, and I never, ever got a no. Like, you can't cut that tree down. Now, certainly there's some trees that we're a park and style golf course, so it's not Oakmont. We're not going in and just greasing every tree, like I still find it ironic. I said it to Zims when he got there, John, they got to change that logo. There shouldn't be any squirrels. Like there aren't any trees.
That's a good point.
So, but here it's different, right? This is a park and style golf course. Trees are integral to the design. So like, but I learned this from the Fazio guys and Tom Marzoff. It's like the golf ball has the right of way. So if you have, a 40-year-old, 50-year-old Norway spruce that's 205 yards off the fairway and it's on the right side, it's not a very good location for a Norway spruce because the ball is going to get stuck in there and it certainly doesn't have the right of way. So, just kind of educating the membership on that and the new group that was involved, it just made it real easy. A handful of trees, like I'm sure you know of the American beech tree that's behind number 10 on the old course. Like that is a specimen tree. I don't know how many 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago, the steel company put they have South Mountain, which is a research center. They put a American beech there and they put an American beech on the golf course. So there's like a big history there, right? So like, okay, so we can prune that one, but we can't cut that down. Great. But aside from that, like really had no other. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it was awesome. Just went through the process, and it's history.
So what are some of those lessons then that you kind of picked up from the Latshaws, from Jay-Z? What are some of the things that you picked up from them that you've kind of carried on to what you're doing now?
So I wouldn't. So there's a system, right? And I'm a product of that system. And all of us do similar things, but we all do different things as well. But inherently, it's more of a team approach, and that really, I think, started with Mr. Latshaw. I didn't work for Mr. Latshaw, but obviously there's a lot of crossover there. And so really, I think that's where it all starts, and that is, I hate the word, but they say pedigree, it's like, oh, this person's pedigree. Like we're not dogs, but like, it's.
Were you best in show, Jim?
Yeah. Right. Like you work, who'd you work for? And really like John is probably one of the best examples of that. Like he'll always talk about like, well, when he, like, I remember looking at his resume back when we were at Sandridge together, and I'm like, why do you have under education Paul R. Latshaw? Like that's a reference, right? That was the super like, and then his answer was awesome. He's like, no. Like, yeah, Rutgers is the formality. I've got that, but I learned everything from this person, so that's my education. So that's really what we do. Like, and the people that I worked with at Marion, the people that we worked with and the team that we built at Sandridge, and then how all that branched out, like you're hiring people and you're training people and you're really allowing them to kind of develop and grow, that like they're growing as a professional and as an adult with you, right? So that's kind of what I bring to the table, and that's what I try to instill to all of my people and my assistants in particular. And I think that's why they're so successful. They're all still employed, and they're all, getting extensions on contracts, and it's awesome, So like that, I think, is what I see as the difference maker maybe in what we do as opposed to some other superintendents, or groups. It's a deep group of camaraderie, like if any, Greg James, he's at Liberty National. He just called me yesterday. He's like, hey, you didn't answer my email. I'm like, well, when did you send it? And I pull it up. It's like January 21st. I'm like, man, I don't even know where I was on January 21st. What was He's like, well, I need 4 guys for this women's event in May, and it's May this. I'm like, all right, well, I'll send you 4 guys, but call me. I must have missed your emails.
That was probably the same day I sent you the original text about coming on, and then I had to run into you at the show and
exactly,
follow up.
Yeah. And then you're like, I go, what text? And I'm like, oh shit.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. We spared you a little bit because when I walked downstairs to that Sunday night party at the show and I ran into you and Jay-Z's like, I'm coming on the podcast. I'm going to host it and we're going to grill Jim and blah, 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 blah. So we went back and forth. Adam and I talked about, should we get Jay-Z on here? And
Yeah.
Should we get John on here
I'm
to
glad
pepper
you
some
didn't
questions?
because well, he would have thought he's getting back at me because like we're like good buddies and we've
Yeah.
been through a lot and like all the stuff we did at Sandwich was crazy, man. And he is deathly afraid of snakes, so I would always tease him like I mean he would run. I'm like, you're in the middle of the woods. Like there's fucking cottonmouths everywhere. There's garter snakes, pygmy rattlers. I didn't even know what those were until I moved there. They're little, they look like worms, but they're very aggressive. So,
Yeah, yeah.
so I just
Nope
would,
ropes.
I would tease him all the time about that. So yeah, it wouldn't have been real good for John because I would have grilled him just as bad.
Next time you're playing in a scramble or something with him, get one of those fake snakes and attach it to
Yes.
Oh,
his
man.
shoe or something. We'll see what
I
happens.
mean, I'm telling you, even a fake snake, like
Yeah, yeah,
like we put a snake skin on his golf cart.
yeah.
Actually, it wasn't. He was a big Kawasaki mule guy, so we put like just the snake skin in the bed of his cart.
That's brutal. That is brutal.
Yeah, but you
So,
know the group. I mean, Bate,
oh, they're the best.
Ron Skoke, and Chad Mark, and all these guys. Like we just and it's the same thing. Like when we were at Marion, it's the same. It's the same type of people. It's just
Yeah.
different names, right? And everybody's hugely successful in the industry, and that really is a function of or an adjunct of what Mr. Latchall started. We all kind of have our own little, I guess we've developed our own style, but it's still growing and allowing young minds to kind of develop, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, you guys all have those different branches. So, aside from the development side of it and kind of how that group has helped you mature and grow in your role, how much do you rely on those guys on a daily basis now to, get you through problems or whatever it may be? I mean, how much those guys play a role in your continued success?
Yeah, that's first of all, the second that you pretend to know everything is the minute you should look for a different profession because it's not our job isn't like that. Like you're always learning. There's always new technology. There's always new chemistry, right? And you're never going to rest on your laurels and your club's not going to want to be the best all the time, right? They always want to be the best. And there's a lot of, oh, the greens are faster. Like just here at Saucon, like if we let's say we nail like our seed head suppressant on our POA greens, our gray screens, and they're not growing. And we double cut and we roll. They're lightning fast compared to our bentgrass greens that are, growing out of their shoes because it's the spring, and we can't quite slow them down, or you're at varying recovery stages of aerification in the spring, right? So like if I have a growth retardant on for seed head suppressant on or a seed head suppressant on my POA greens, they're not growing, they're not moving. Our members are like, oh, we're all playing Grace today because the greens are fast as shit. You know what I mean? But like we're not doing anything wrong, but right. So like you're always having that, that macho thing with your membership. So you're always trying to outcompete one another, so our peer network is tight. And some people are real geeky with data and technology. I mean, I want to pay attention to technology and data, and as things change, I want to remain progressive, but I also want to feel and see and touch what's happening. Where I can't just all my decisions aren't predicated on growing degree days, for instance, or like, this new GS with that ball from the USGA what the hell is
GS3.
that? GS3, yeah. And we use it. But I don't think there's an art and a science to it, and you have to find that happy medium. And where we succeed as a peer group is we're always talking about that. So like I'll lean on Chad for it. Like Chad is out there, man. When it comes, well, like he knows what ball is going to roll 2 inches faster, what brand of ball. He knows like all these little tricks, he's what I like. He's knee deep in it, right? When it comes to that kind of stuff. Saucon being a true country club with every amenity you could shake a stick at is a little different than that. Jack being, being Jack is a little bit different, right, than what I'm dealing with. So those are kind of different things. So, but we communicate all the time about that. Anything new, like you talk about growth regulators a change, or you talk about mixing certain growth regulators, or any of the new like DMIs that are coming out. Like we all talk about that and say, hey, have you seen this? Or how are you using a new growth regulator with your current, trim it program or cutlass, or, and everybody's doing their own thing differently. Don't get me wrong, but we're always bouncing those types of ideas off of one another, and trying to stay on that cutting edge that really Mr. Latch always was, you know? So, and I never worked for him, but I benefited immensely from what he did for the industry.
I think we all are, right? I mean, I think
Yeah,
everyone in
no
this
question.
industry is benefiting from some of the stuff that he did for
Right.
sure.
Yeah.
So, Jim, I just wanted to take things off the golf course. You talked a lot about work-life balance and, being able to kind of, find time for other things other than just the golf course. So how does that kind of work for you?
Well, I don't play enough golf to I don't play enough as much golf as I should. Let's put it to you that way. It's weird. When I was like 14 years old, I worked at Burger King for 8 days. I haven't had a Whopper since.
Short stint.
So like, when I'm done work, I don't really feel like doing something with work. Now if it's a charity event, or going to play 9 holes with a friend or something like that, my girlfriend or my son or something, like, totally different, or my dad, like, yes, absolutely. But I probably am not as committed to the game of golf as I should be. It's embarrassing. Like, we just played down in at the John Deere World Championships, and it was me, Zims, Phil Kafari, and Manny from John Deere. We had a blast. I mean, it was ham and egg all around. Phil Kafari is a stick, by the way.
Yes.
He would
Zims
be.
is sneaky.
Okay.
Zims is sneaky good. I am terrible, but like it all worked out, right? And we ended up winning our flight, and which was nuts. So it was great, but I would like to do more with golf. I'd like to play more golf, and I'm committed to do that this year. But honestly, my escape is I play ice hockey. We talked about that. So like
Hmm.
I play in like, I don't know, 5 or 6 charity events a year, and then I play in 2 men's leagues. One I have no business being in at all, but they keep asking me to come back because I pay right away.
One of those guys.
That's
Yeah,
huge.
I
That's huge.
pay right away. Like, I don't need the payment plan. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
$300. Like, come on, boys. How hard is it? So, yeah. So that's probably what I enjoy doing more than, or that's probably what I do when you talk work-life balance. And then, um, yeah, go fishing a couple times a year, that kind of thing. Take advantage of the off season, which is why I suck at getting back to people. Which is an embarrassment. I need to commit to doing better there too. But yeah,
Everyone's
no,
busy.
yeah, I ice hockey is probably my release, I would say. Yeah.
So are you the enforcer out there on the ice?
It's a true men's league, man. And the thing,
Yeah.
like the one's a draft league, right? So, and there's like 3 different divisions. So you can write it down. If you have an issue with somebody in your league, that person's on your spring team, or he's on your next winter team. So like,
Oh, wow.
that's how
awesome.
it works out really well. And there's no core players. It's a true draft league. So like there's a lot of balance and parity. So it's really good. Now the other one, and that's a 35 and older league. That's better for me. The other one is like these 21, 22-year-old kids that just came out of school think that they're going to the NHL. They played club hockey at frickin' or intramural or whatever you want to call it at Penn State, and they think their shit don't stink. Don't get me wrong, they're really good. I didn't
Yeah.
play ice hockey. We couldn't afford my family couldn't afford to put skates and gear on me and all the ice time when I was growing up. So I was a street hockey kid. But um, when I moved to Ohio, I had a lot of time on my hands in the winter, and I literally drove by Chad, myself, Ron Skoke, John Namsu, like all these guys. We're all going to a Mexican place for Cinco de Mayo margaritas, and I drove by the All Barn Ice Palace, and it said "Adult Learn to Play." I'm like, that's me, man. So
Nice.
I think I was
Good for you.
32 years, you know, and I'm like, I'm joining a freaking hockey league, and I went to Play It Again Sports and bought all the stuff I thought I needed. I went into the locker room. I'm like, I don't even know what goes on first. I'm just paying it. You know, I could ice skate because we used to go to University of Pennsylvania class of 23 rink as a kid. Like we'd go every Friday night, but you only turn left. You never. I didn't know how to turn right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
What do you mean I have to go the other way?
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm not sure if you know this, Jim, but if you ever need a goalie, a sub goalie for your team, you got the guy with the Turf Today logo behind him there. He used to be in the league. So he's
yeah,
he's
I was
quite the
talking to him a
guy.
little bit. Yeah, texting back and
Guy.
forth, mentioning that. I love it. It's just great, man. Nothing better than hanging out with the boys and having a few, hockey sodas when you're done and laughing,
There you
So
go.
that's what I do. That's my escape.
Adam, it sounds
Maybe.
like you need to recruit him for the big
I
tournament.
was just going to
there
say,
in
yeah, there is
Niagara.
a team, I'm pretty sure, that's come from Philly. So maybe we got to get you linked up with those guys. You can come up and,
Yeah,
and play in Niagara.
yeah, I've been invited a couple times, and then like last year we played the PA Superintendent Association played the Jersey Association. We got spanked. We got some pretty good players, but yeah, they brought some
They
ringers
were
in.
good.
They were supposed to play here in December. I don't know how that it didn't happen. I don't know why, but whoever was organizing didn't happen. But it was going to be right here in Bethlehem at the pretty good rink that we have here, and there's a new casino and a great hotel, and so I'm like, everybody should come here. So I had some house players that work for me in the summertime who are stud players, like played Division 3 and can play hockey, like
Nice.
travel hockey their whole life. So I had two of those kids. The one kid played for Penn State. Like he
Oh
just
wow.
graduated about 4 years ago, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, Gertzy, you're going to be on our team because he worked on the Grace course. He's like, you're
Nice.
no problem, but it fell through. But we would have smoked Jersey this year just from he would have had 5 goals himself. So
Is that part of your hiring process now? Is you check to see
Yes.
what their hockey skills are? Like check their resume out. You're hired.
yeah, they kind of go to the top of the pile. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Well, we've
Yeah,
barely scratched the surface here, and we're already taking up a bunch of your time. So we'll have to have you on again. We haven't even talked tournaments or anything. But
yeah,
before,
I have a problem. I could talk forever. I apologize.
yeah, no, you're good, man. I was gonna say just before we let you go, we'll definitely have to have you back on. But before we let you go here today, is there anything you want to specifically talk about?
I don't want to sound controversial, but I feel like I do think that our industry is in for a little bit of a rude awakening here pretty soon. I mean, I think you're going to see, um, gosh, I'll tell you, there's just so much going on right now with like consultants, right? And it's not just in our area, but it's mainly, honestly, it's mainly F&B. Like you see that. And like I pride myself on recruiting and going to these job fairs and these events and trying to talk to these young minds that want to do this or my peers and say hey John, if you have a guy that's looking, I have this position, or Chad, or like we'll send out an email to like 25 guys and say, okay, who has somebody that's ready to fit in here, but you don't have the spot available, right? So like my job for these guys is to find that spot. If I don't have it for them and they're ready for it, I can't keep my thumb on them because it makes it easier for me. I need to move them on. I just don't see enough people in that position right now. So I think that's an issue, and I think that naturally lends itself to hiring these these consultant firms that are going to come in and give you um, candidate options or whatever. And I just worry that, particularly in probably like the GM side of things, you know, when you look at some of these big, and I don't want to call any of these companies out, but if you look at some of these bigger companies, I don't know that they're doing a service to the industry. I feel like they've all been involved in the business, but then are not in the business. Now they've created a business and they're still calling the people that are in the business to get the names for their business to the point where it's questionable, but it's almost like a pay to play scheme, you know? And I'm concerned about that. And I'm far enough in my career to where I don't think it really is going to hurt me to speak up. But we don't have the Matt Schaefers anymore, and the Mr. Latchalls and the Dick Baders and all these very vocal. When I first started in the business, to digress a little, when I first started in the business, you know, the number one person at the club was the GM. Well, when I just graduated college, it wasn't anymore. Very important person, a cog in the wheel of management, but your golf course is what drove the club. And to this day, it's the same thing. Like I question why an F&B person at a club that never makes that if they break even, that's monumentally odd. You know,
Yeah.
they're usually losing money. And you're competing in a restaurant where you're a member, but you might not want steak tonight. You might want Mexican or Chinese food, or you know what I'm saying? So like
Yep.
I just struggle a little bit with that, and I think that our business is a little bit messed up where we've got all these people that are trying to go in and tell clubs how they should be running and how they're not running from people that used to be in the club side that aren't anymore. I know this is convoluted the way I'm coming at it, but I do think that there's a bit of a I do think that there's a bit of a misnomer there where clubs are being told that they're not that their identity needs to be a certain way. And I disagree with that. I think that a club should run how a club, you know, each club has its own identity. You know, they have their own ideologies. And that kind of goes back to the culture thing that we talked about. Like when you go through the gate, you're like, oh, you know, you go to Muirfield Village. What do you want? A milkshake. They're known for their milkshakes.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like you go to Oakmont. What do you want to do? You want to stand up there and putt on that putting green because that green's lightning fast. Like these identities can't change, right? Like I wonder if we're not going to start to see that as things progress in the next, unless something changes, you know, where I don't know. I look at my club and I say, you know, oh gosh, and I don't want to again get too controversial, but like a club should run how the club chooses to run. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah. No one's
know,
going to know their identity better than the people inside of it, right? No one's going to know
yeah,
the tradition, the history, the culture of the club more than the
yeah,
people that are embedded in it every single day.
right.
That
And I
makes total
think
sense.
things evolve. I mean, clearly it evolves. Like, you know, the steel company's not involved here anymore, and if it wasn't
Yeah.
for Bethlehem Steel, we would never exist.
Yep.
But there's still a lot of really neat stuff that is embedded in the culture here of this club that'll never change and shouldn't change because of, you know, what Bethlehem Steel instilled into the club. And you just see that everywhere. Like I'd hate to see somebody go into Oakmont and say, "Oh, you know, these greens are terrible. Let's blow them up because they're unfair and let's, you know, put bent grass on them." Oh my God, what? You know?
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I might be coming at it from left field, but I'm kind of looking at it saying, man, I'm a little concerned about some of those things changing, you know?
And nothing wrong with caring for the industry, right? You put so much into it. You want to see it go to the right hands in the right place.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yep.
Every single one of these people that work in the environment that we have here, it's like blood, sweat, and tears, right? You want to see them. Like my job is to ensure that I'm giving them 150% back. And that's my job. Like my job is to help them develop their skills and then to go on and be in a chair like this at a different club. I I don't want to not do that. That's my goal, you know? And so when I have members that are members at other clubs and they're like, "Oh, we're looking for a superintendent." do you have a guy? You're damn right I have a guy, but here's what the expectation is. And then, oh, well, have him reach out to this organization and why would I do that? Like, why would I do that? You can save your money. Hire the guy.
Yeah, just
With
take the
him,
guy.
yeah, with him, you get me and you get all these other people too. Like, I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at.
Turf Today is also brought to you by our friends at Apex 10 by Green Nature. And if you haven't heard about them yet, head over to greennature.life to see all the information you can about this amazing new product. We are also going to be doing a product giveaway, including some merchandise, between the Turf Today and Apex 10 Life account on Instagram. So give them a follow at Apex 10 Life.
That might have been John that told us that, when he got his job when he was really young, they asked him, why should we hire someone so young? It's like, well, because I don't know the answer. These are the people that I surround myself with, and I can always make those phone calls. So you guys, I think that program that you talked about before, I mean, you guys are clearly more about growing people than you are growing grass. Obviously, you're all very good at the actual technical side of growing grass, but what sets you guys apart, I think what sets, not just your group, but the top people that we have an opportunity to talk to, that is their primary focus. When you hire good people, when you train people, they're going to want to come in and work for you, and they're going to do a great job out on the golf course when it matters. And that's my favorite part of this business by far, is just seeing that commitment to growing others and sending others along. So kudos to you and the rest of the team for doing it.
One other thing about that, and it's really funny because like I deal with it often because I have 3 superintendents, and every time there's a new job posting, it's like, who's the guy going for the job? And I'm not going to put 2, let alone 3 people's name into the hat. If I can't pick the guy, how can I have the club pick the guy, right? So I'd always have that come to Jesus with the guys, and it's like, well, you would think that that's difficult, and it's really not, because which person is ready and which person is not ready. And like when Chad was my assistant at Sandridge, he was so ready to be a superintendent that like we would just argue all the time. Like, like he's a pretty what's the word, strong-minded individual anyway, but like we would just argue about splitting hair agronomic decisions, and finally I'm like, okay, Chad, you just be patient. The job's going to come, don't take a shitty job because you're frustrated. Let it happen. Things happen for a reason, and that's the truth. So, I don't know. I just digressed a little there only because of what you said, but that's the truth. Growing grass represents, 10% of what I do. It's not, so I have to make sure that these individuals understand that, because when they're being pulled and tugged in 50 directions to sit in, men's opening dinner, or, I don't know, like we have these committees here that I'm involved in that I'm like, why? Sometimes I wonder why I'm even going to some of these meetings, but like, if like today's a perfect example, we're deep tining greens, finally able to do something, and yet I'm sitting in a meeting for 2 hours. Like, so I tell them, I say, I'm really sorry, but we're going to be interrupted because I need to make sure this is going okay, we don't have to cancel the meeting because I trust my guys and I trust that they'll make the right decision. And I think it's a good thing because, my number 1 guy is on vacation right now. So like the number 2 and number 3 guy are out there making the decisions. So, it is what it is. You got to kind of do that. But yeah.
Well, Jim, we can't thank you enough for doing this. And like Brian said, we're going to have to bring you back, maybe have a little Jim and John episode and bring Jay-Z back, and you guys could do a little back and forth. I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Well, we talk all the time. So like, I literally have to
he's probably texted you 2 or 3 times during this conversation.
Right now, I got to call him back.
That's awesome. Well, I just want to say I greatly appreciate everything you do, Jim. Appreciate you coming on here. And I think I told Adam, sometimes there's that awkwardness with someone that comes in to replace someone else. And obviously it being close to home for me, you have been nothing but gracious and welcoming, and have always rolled out the red carpet anytime that myself or my family has gone back to Saucon Valley. So just want to say thank you for that, and for being so welcoming, and letting us come back and return and check the
Oh
place
my
out.
God.
It's
Thank
in
you.
great hands. There's no
Hey,
question.
I mean, that's the least we can do. But, I mean, we're not, they talk about degrees of separation. It's like, I don't even know how I would describe what the degrees of separation is with our industry. Like,
Oh, it's insane, right? It's 6 degrees everywhere else. It's 1.5 for us.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. Tight.
yeah,
Tight
exactly.
standards.
Nuts.
No, it's the best. I remember the first time I came back, and you took me over. You took me up to the shop. I think I dropped about $1,500 in the shop the first time I was
nice.
back. Like, I hadn't been back in so long. I accidentally
up.
bought my wife a cashmere sweater, and I'm like, oh shit, I had no clue what that was. But
Oh,
anyways,
yeah.
but no, you're the best. It's always a treat to come back to Saucon, and like I said, I mean, it's in good hands.
Yeah, you're always welcome.
I'd love to
Appreciate
come
that.
visit you too, Jim.
Yeah,
That'd be a lot of
totally.
fun. And I'm just not walking 60 holes though. We're gonna have to take a cart.
No worries, man. No worries. I don't want to do that either.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, always great to chat with you here, Ron, and look
All
forward
right,
to seeing you down the road.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you guys. I appreciate it so much.
All right.
All
Take care,
man.
Jim.
Take care, Jim.
All right, we'll see you.
See
Bye-bye.
you.
Yeah, that
Wow.
might be like part 1 of 3.
I know we're gonna have to have him back.
Yeah.
That was great. Like I said, I mean, we didn't dive into any championship stuff. I mean, he's got a lot going on. He's got a irrigation project going on right now. They're building housing. Oh gosh, I don't even know, cottages or whatever for members and guests to stay in. I mean, he's got a lot going on there. Like we talked about, it's I don't know that we fully got into it, but Saucon Valley it's basically a town upon itself. I mean, it's 3 18-hole golf courses, a 6-hole kind of practice course, which is the coolest thing I think for clubs to have. It's, before you can play the big courses, they have for kids, they have this 6-hole practice course, and you have to go out and you have to be able to play it 3 times and shoot under 90 on the little par 3 course in order to essentially qualify to play the bigger courses. I don't know if they still do it that way or not, but when I was growing up out there, that's what we had to do. It was really neat. It was really neat. But yeah, I mean, that complex is just unbelievable. It's 3 of the top 10, or I think 3 courses at one time were in the top 10 in Pennsylvania, which is
Wow.
saying a lot.
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, it's unreal. I was literally, my parents were over, and my dad was showing me this interview that Charles Barkley did recently, and they were firing questions at him. Favorite golf course? He's fired back Saucon Valley. He was
Nice.
out there all the time. Would always
It's
see
one of his
Charles
spots.
Barkley. Yeah, I mean, just again, 45 minutes north of Philadelphia. So a lot of
Yeah.
the Sixers, the Phillies, a lot of those guys would come up and play. Anytime one of the baseball teams traveled in to play the Phillies, all the guys would come out and play. So I met Oral Hershiser out there. Even Michael Jordan came out and played one time, and we saw all these guys coming in. It's just it's a pretty special place, very special place. So, and again, hosted multiple USGA events. I think they've got one coming up either this year or next. So there's a lot of action out of Saucon.
Nice. Definitely a place I'd like to check out. Sounds like a
Yep.
spot you could probably go for a weekend or a few days with the boys.
No, absolutely. If you're fortunate enough to get some access and invitation to go out there, you're definitely going to want to take 2 or 3 days to soak it all in, because they're really good golf courses. Really, I mean, and again, I mean the tournament course is the old course. That's where they always play their USGA events. But I mean, you could go back and forth between which is the best. My favorite out there is Way Hill. It used to be the old Bethlehem Steel course, which he was talking about, Bethlehem Steel. When I was growing up, no one was ever out there. But in my opinion, it had the most character on the 800 plus acre property. It's just so good. It's just so good.
Another week in the books and another great episode. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate everything you guys do for us. Keep doing what you can by sharing the show, rating the show, sending us a review, sending us some feedback. If there's things you guys want to see in the show, things you don't like, let us know. This is a community-run show, and we get a lot of our input, a lot of our guests, and a lot of the different questions and things that come up are from you guys. So don't hesitate to reach out. I want to thank our sponsors, Toro, Anderson's, Apex 10, and Standard Golf. Also a huge shout out to Mr. Jim Roney. He was absolutely amazing. We can't wait to have him on again. We'll see everybody next week. We got another good one. Keep those reels sharp.